And then it can do these things where they're going to limit you on food, on breathing, on drinking water, and just totally not having an industrialized country. It's going to be like Africa. People dying of something simple as like diarrhea. That's going to happen if you don't want to stand up. But hey, I'm the bad guy here because I don't want globalists taking over my country. And having a carbon tax that, first of all, let's get this out of the way right now. CO2 emissions do not control the Earth's weather. All right? It's the cause of the axis of the Earth. The Earth from the sun. And when it tilts, we get summer. When it tilts one way, we get winter and fall and winter. And then when it tilts the other way, we get spring and summer. Some places take longer than others. Most places don't take longer than others. It just goes right ahead. But hey, we don't want to look at a farmer's almanac because we think we know everything because Al Gore's our king and our god. And, even though he's admitted to be one of the biggest con men in the world. And scientists are trying to sue him because of this fraudulent data that he put in front of the committee and says, like, there's a legitimate science on this weather problem, and it's because of the people, and we gotta kill the people. Just like Ted Turner says, we need about 80 to 90% of the people exterminated. Look this up. This is their own quotes here. It's not that hard. Anyway, let's go into this article here. Hopefully I can get into all of it. It just goes through paragraph after paragraph for James Lovelock, the one that wants to do population reduction. Oh, and kill everybody. Isn't it fun? Here we go from Infowars.com. Death Summit 2012, a window into 21st century eugenics. The Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro has begun. The global... the globe that is the United Nations bars its teeth in the mouths presiding the summit. A continuing stream of publications has poured down from every corner of the transnational community in session calling for global governance, which will never save a thing. But hey, and that's not coming from the article, that was coming from me, for global governance of the environment, as well as a struck reduction in the global human population. Because, hey, there's too many people. And even if that was the problem, even if that was the case, wouldn't that really ruin the Earth? Even though it's not, even though eugenics is actually ruining the Earth more than actual regular human beings that actually do help the Earth with agriculture, with trying to build things for animals and trying to make the world a better place. It's not that hard. All right, let's look into this. These two items are very much intertwined, according to the growing pile of UN papers flying from the supernatural tree, all basically stating that the first, it's necessary in order to destroy the Earth, in the letter. Isn't it fun? One of these leaving circles down to us from the United Nations environmental program, UNEP, displays a collection of key messages written by the usual suspects, such as dissent human haters, people, was it Paul Locklear, eco-terrorist James Lovelock, the one that wants to kill everybody, But hey, he shouldn't be arrested. The other people that deny this stuff should be arrested. And NASA's own mad as hell environmentalist James Hansen, their joint statement titled Environment and Development Changes the imperative to act was clearly designed to inspire the UN and its upcoming confed to make haste with global government. In their manifesto, the impatient fiends call for a global implementation of population policy and rights being trampled upon in order to address what they call the population issue, which is, first of all, the population is not really the problem. It is more of them. It's the technocrats that are the problem. They are the problem. But hey, Al Gore is good, and all these other people are good, and it's good to just be a slave and whatever. I gotta stop. I am just so agitated by this. The population issue should be addressed by education and empowerment of women, including in the workforce and in rights, ownership, and enhance health care of children and the elderly, and making modern contraception accessible to all, they write. So then they can say that, listen, you can't have a kid, you can't have this kind of health care because we're going to give you death penalties in your health care. We're going to kill you. We're going to make sure that you can't breathe anymore. We're going to give you a carbon tax. We're going to make sure you're not going to have property rights. We're going to make sure you're not going to have a job. We're going to make sure that your country's going to be destabilized. We're going to make sure that there's a world government. We're going to make sure of it. And it's just this fakeism that we're always into. To think for some reason, if we're in this fake type of environment, that's going to stop the problem, when really in reality it doesn't. It makes the whole situation worse. Okay, fine. Globally, we must find better means to agree and implement measures to achieve collective goals. Of course, hey, even though the whole thing is just a total joke, the authors go on to assert that in the face of an obviously unprecedented emergency, society has no choice but to take drastic action to avert a collapse of civilization. Either we will change our ways and build an entirely new kind of global society, or they'll be changed for us. So we're going to make you do it, or else. We're going to build this society for you, or we're going to just do it anyway. That's why they're going to try to implement the Venus Project. That's a total Agenda 21 type of style, but they could also implement that when the guy is admitted to be part of the KKK and communist groups. I mean, come on, and part of the Zeitgeist movement. And the Zeitgeist movement guy just left and said, I'll just give it to the Venus Project, and that's what we should be a part of. Part of a bunch of cities that will acclimate us into the FEMA regions, put us into just places where you're going to stay in those cities, never leave, because humans are scum, because they want you in those Holocaust areas, into like the ghetto, into concentration camps just like the Uganda. And then they say, okay, fine, you can't really go into also forests, you can't go into anywhere because, hey, it's disturbing nature right now because you're breathing, even though that's going to kill nature if we don't breathe and have carbon dioxide. But hey, that's all right. And everybody's going to go, well, what's your point? Well, my point is the fact that you can still fight this and stop this crap. It's either you want this for your children, you want to be a part of a fact that, well, I'm not going to have children, I'm going to save myself. Well, you want this for you and your family. You want this for your country. You do. Well, you know what? If you do, go to hell. Go to North Korea. And go to hell. Because I had enough. Go to North Korea. You don't belong here. You really don't. But hey, that's okay. Hey, we're supposed to love it. Decrying that funding for wide control decreased by 30% between 1995 and 2008, not least as a result of legislative pressure from the religious right in the U.S. and elsewhere. The authors call for education and planning needed to foster and achieve a sustainable human population and lifestyles. Now, what do you think this means, actually? A sustainable human population. James Lovelock in 2009 gave us the answer, called for the calling of the queuing of the population with a desired outcome of 1 billion people worldwide. So what is that? So there'll be like 4 million deaths, 5 million deaths, a billion deaths, 5 billion deaths. So it'd be like only 1 billion people worldwide. But hey, most people think it'd be great. Even like some comedians like Bill Burr think that people should all be exterminated. It's like, what? Really? Then why don't we start with you and get the thing over with? I mean, so then we don't have to do what they want to do. Lovelock also stated in 2010 that humans are too stupid to prevent climate change. Therefore, government worldwide, preferably a one world government, must prevent it from them. So now they want to be gods. Well, they always try to be gods, but yet they're not. And yet they're saying, you know what, we need this world government to save you from the climate, even though the climate has nothing to do with people. It has everything to do with the highs and the low temperatures and the axis line of the Earth and the seasons of the Earth of spring, summer, fall, winter, with the sun also organizing the weather as well. But hey, I shouldn't talk, you know. Hey, I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, you can as easily read a Farmer's Almanac or read a studies about the fact that the melting ice caps, first of all, do it seasonally. They heat up in the summer, they melt, and then they freeze up in the wintertime. This is admitted. This is from Greenland. It's a natural process that happens in Nepal, in Canada, in Greenland, in other places that have glaciers. You know, they also said the polar bears will be wiped out of extinction when, first of all, the polar bears are actually, the population has grown further than it ever has before, and actually going into cities, and nobody can ever shoot them or ever try to get them off their land. All right. Hey. I'm just talking craziness. Hey. Of all the well, by the way, I'm running out of time, so once it hits 2 hours, I'm going to stop this podcast. So I'm going to try to just read as much as I can from this article and just finish this. Try to. And if I can't finish it, I might try to finish it tomorrow, but probably not, because I'll probably get into something else. Of all the eco-fascist panning down proposals, Paul Alex, whatever his name is, may be considered the most bloodthirsty of the bunch, with his continuing intents on massive population reduction. Few people need to be reminded of the world he wrote in Ecoscience, which he co-authored with John P. Holdren. the current White House science czar to highlight a few of these. And it's actually, you can just go right there. John P. Holdren, Obama's science czar, says forced abortions and massive sterilization needed to save the planet. Where does he get the right to say that? How is that hurting the world? How is that? It isn't. Saying that they had to tell people and make them admit that babies weren't human? What? And then they find out, they admit later, I think now, people are like, wait a second. Babies are human beings. All people are human beings. It's like, no, kill them all so we can have 10 teachers. What? Oh, whatever. Adding a sterilant to drinking water or staple foods is a suggestion that seems to horrify people more than most proposals for involuntary variety control. Indeed, this would pose some very difficult political, legal, and social questions, to say nothing of the technical problems. No such sterilant exist today, nor does one appear to be under development to be accessible. Such a substance would have to meet some rather stiff requirements. It must be unformably affect despite widely varying doses received by individuals, and despite varying degrees of variety, and sustainable. Come on, man. Among individuals, it must be free of dangerous or positive side effects, and it must have no effect on members of the opposite sex, children, old people, plants, or livestock. Remember this when you read his proposals for a global society necessary to address population issues, also out of ecoscience. Perhaps those agencies, combined with UNEP, the United Nations Population Agencies, might eventually be developed into a planetary regime, sort of an international super agency for population, resource, and environment. Such a competitive planetary regime could control the development, administration, conservation, and distribution of all national resources, renewable or non-renewable, at least insofar as international complications exist. This suggestion might well come to pass, considering the statements issued by an organization calling itself the Regeneration Project, when resulting recently, it suggests in their manifest bringing Rio closer, that the UN Security Council expanded its mandate to include environmental issues and security issues relating to the environment, as well as an international court for the environment, to the ICE, to settle disputes related to the environment and international environmental laws. Global institutions, they say, will be responsible for developing, implementing, and monitoring sustainable development policies going forward, currently left largely to UNEP and the UN's Commission to Sustainable Development. There is a desire by many to strengthen the authority of these institutions, and are created a new world environmental organization. The group also called upon governments and NGOs to create personal carbon quotas, essentially making carbon and a new form of currency for individuals, a global carbon policy. In other words, enforced by a global carbon court. Furthermore, the group adverse implementations of population stabilization policies at the upcoming summit, securing commitments from governments to try to stabilize global population. The document reads, stabilize the global population no less, and using on UN member states governments as the enforcers of policies designed to achieve that goal. Here we have yet another example of key globalist planners proposing for reaching measures to exercise control over the masses, not for the sake of control itself. That's something for the minor psychopaths that play along, but with the objective of calling the human population globally. Another measure proposed by the Regeneration Project, establishing a World Environment Organization, the WEO. The envisioned planetary regime is nearly when we take into consideration this set of proposals issued by the group. We might be surprised where the group, not co-sponsored by the United Nations environmental program, the UNEP, and the World Bank. We have come to expect such things from these organizations. It was the World Bank which back in 1984 suggests, page 8, that drastic steps may be necessary if developing nations do not comply with their population control directives. It was not the first time that the Regeneration Project sought to cue the human population in their paper Unfinished Business. The group consists with the Georgia Guidestones advises governments to keep the population under a certain number. Stabilizing population to not more than 8 billion people. The Unfinished Business reported explains. Another concept that has been thrown out there is that humanity has now entered a new geological era, demanded not by natural processes, but by man. This new age obsessively doubted the adapted the Anthropocene, whatever that is, can only be reversed. The UN says when transnational rule wipes out sovereignty rule, and a suggestion that has a distant tyrannical ring to it. So that's a lot of things to swallow here. They want to implement this so then they can have not only population control, but also environmental control and resource control and everything else. Just like I've talked about, Alex Jones has also talked about, a lot of people have talked about this. It is just off the chart crazy. And I'm going to end this this podcast right now. You can follow me again at youtube.com. Go to Madness4life news, and it says Madness4life. Just go there and subscribe, as well as be a fan of Madness4life news on Facebook, as well as follow me on Vimeo and planetinfowars.com. I am your host, Matt Maldonado, and I hope everybody has a good night. And good luck, everybody. And remember, united we stand, divided we fall.